Well, I'm Gary Waterman, a former UK police constable. I've decided to do these last couple of videos again. I wasn't happy with some of the wording that I used. So welcome to part 9 of the evidential research document, again in relation to the CERN Hadron Collider. In the last part, we looked at the creation of the World Wide Web, tying immediately in with CERN, showing how important CERN is in all of this, and that creator linking in significantly to Dorset and via companies to Export Manor Freehold Limited, very quickly, the company that I was removed from for refusing to file forged bank documents. And that removal was initiated by the Fleming family, and where the creator of the World Wide Web lived was in Wimborne, which is where the Flemings that initiated my removal also live. We looked at, in the last few parts, the very relevant dates of 1947 and 48, tying in with the Israel-Arab War, tying in with the creation of the Association of Chief Police Officers, and also tying in with the creation of the Doomsday Clock, a visual representation of a future man-made apocalyptic event, whether it be a to do with nuclear weapons or technological advancement. Now, of course, CERN would fit both of those categories. It even has nuclear in its real name, and of course it is a technological experimental facility. We looked at lots of other really important information. I do suggest you go and look at those, and I will be circulating the document as well soon to those that are on my contact list, and of course hopefully they will send it on and it will be shared far and wide. Now, more recently we looked at information. I'm just going to recap here as we move through the document, where it appeared that I was being deliberately deceived and misdirected to believe that Astra companies were linked to missing nuclear weapons from the 1980s, tying in with David Cameron and Margaret Thatcher's son. And that was via a company called Astra Holdings Limited. I was so concerned about this and believed this at the time that I even made a call to the Scottish police here. You can see a screenshot taken from the call, and that was on either the 28th or 29th of November 2024. I then found information that suggests that those individuals leading me down this path were working on behalf of those running the fraud. So that was a case of trying to make me fall for the threat of nuclear weapons, when really it appears it was about CERN, because Atlas was the experiment used to create the Higgs boson or God particle in 2012, the same year that the Mayan calendar ended. So we have to consider, and you're going to see some very important information coming up, we have to consider that they were trying to create a point of singularity in 2012 to tie in with the Hadron Collider, to invert everything basically as a mockery to creation itself and an inversion of creation. And we're going to come to why they would do that at the end of all of this evidence. So we'd looked at that previously. We then looked at articles and research as to whether CERN could actually be used to create a black hole in theory, and various articles suggested it could. And then we looked at how Stephen Hawking wanted to create a black hole using CERN to create a black hole on Earth. You can see the article here. And now we're going to look at Stephen Hawking in a little bit more detail, because it is very important information. So this is his Wikipedia, and it says Stephen William Hawking, born 1942 to 2018, when he supposedly died. Well, firstly, that is potentially quite relevant, because that is around the time 2018 when Gordon Bowden was making the connections to the Companies House fraud and an address of 788 to 790 Finchley Road. He was assisting a lady called Michelle Young, who I now suspect is involved in the international fraud and the links of what we're talking about here. And she informed me, when I established her connection to him, that he had been murdered. Okay, and he died in 2020. So reading on, it says Stephen was an English theoretical physicist, cosmologist and author who was director of research at the Centre for Theoretical Cosmology at the University of Cambridge. Now, although I haven't shown it and featured it much, Cambridge University is linked to this international government fraud. And remember, everything has been centralised by a very small group of people who have managed to take full control because they control the currency production, they control the international child trafficking and paedophile rings. Okay, they also control the taxation system. They've been able to manipulate and control everything and centralise it all to be able to funnel funds into a particular project, which appears to be CERN, and the link to the cell towers that we're going to come to later. Reading on, it says between 1979 and 2009, he was the Lucasian, probably pronounced that wrong, professor of mathematics at Cambridge, widely viewed as one of the most prestigious academic posts in the world. Now, we know how they like to put information and relevant dates and symbology through things. Well, 1979 was the date that they designed the granite stones of the Georgia Guidestones that were then put in place in America in 1980. And they represented, again, an upcoming man-made apocalyptic event, whether it be nuclear or technological. Now, they were damaged on the 6th of July 2022, 2 days before I approached the acting chairman for Exbourne Manor, Anthony Roberts, to look at the bank documents for our company. Okay, when you research the Georgia Guidestones, its designer or creator, Robert Christian, links very quickly to Exbourne Manor Freehold Limited. And when you read about the Georgia Guidestones, it suggests that there were Christian and satanic cult links potentially to it. In 2009, that's also important. That is the year that the Royal Foundation of the Prince and Princess of Wales Company was created. It's also the year of the Iranian Green Movement. And I'm going to show lots of evidence in relation to this, tying in with the climate change agenda as a deception in relation to the Iranian connection. This now links in with the immigration side of things that we're seeing. Reading on in relation to Stephen Hawking, it says that his fields were general relativity and quantum gravity. And his thesis was properties of expanding universes from 1966, the same year as the foundation of the Church of Satan. And I do suspect, remember, we're talking about a mockery of creation and them appearing to try and create the contraction of the universe and creation itself into a point of singularity using a black hole. And let's face it, if these people are worshipping the opposite of the true creator of moral conscience, truth, transparency, integrity, trust, fairness, equality, and the system is completely the opposite, then the ultimate thing they could do as a mockery to that creation is to reverse creation and time itself. And the only way you can do that is by removing the universe or galaxy as we know it. And we're going to look in, I'll mention it later and we'll come to it, how it appears they've lied about our Earth and our galaxy to fit with the CERN ultimate goal. So, okay, the expanding universes. So what is quantum gravity? One of the fields that he was looking at. It's a field of theoretical physics that seeks to describe gravity according to the principles of quantum mechanics. Now remember, there's all this stuff going on about quantum financial system. I suspect that is also to hide the plan in relation to CERN. Reading on, it says it deals with environments in which neither gravitational nor quantum effects can be ignored, such as in the vicinity of black holes or similar compact astrophysical objects, as well as in early stages of the universe, moments after the Big Bang. Okay, so they're talking about the creation of everything in that point of singularity, because according to the scientists, that single point expanded from nothing into what we now know as the universe. Okay, and of course, remember what I've just said, the mockery, invert that as a mockery of creator. So Stephen Hawking was really looking into and important in relation to black holes. And this explains why my wife's father was so interested in talking about black holes and event horizons and point of singularities. And we even talked about Stephen Hawking. And the research surrounding him links very quickly into the CERN Hadron Collider. Reading on, it says Hawking Hawking, was born in Oxford. Well, that is where Ghislaine, Maxwell and Robert Maxwell lived. They were very prominent, and Ghislaine was also a director of Oxford Football Club, and we know what we're led to believe they were all involved in, which ties in with the international child trafficking and blood taken from children that appears to be very prevalent in relation to all of this. So he was born in Oxford into a family of physicians. In October 1959, at the age of 17, he began his university education at University College. Well, 1958 is an important year. The year before this, it's the year when NASA was founded, one letter short of Satan. And it's also the year when Prince Charles, at the age of 9, became initiated to become the Prince of Wales in 1969. And 1969 is when the first moon landing happened. Now, I'm going to go into it a little bit later, but I'll mention it quickly now. I suspect they've lied about everything, including the moon landing, and tried to get us to believe that Earth is not the center of the galaxy or the universe, so that it draws away from the relevance of creating a point of singularity or black hole on Earth, in it really being the center of everything. Because remember, if you were satanic and you were going to create a point of singularity to invert the universe, you'd have to do it at the center of that galaxy or universe, okay? So I suspect they've lied about everything. And we've mentioned Stonehenge earlier, tying in with, because the Guidestones were the US version of Stonehenge. Well, J.P. Morgan, that links to the Flemings, was involved in the archaeology of Stonehenge, but also the Egyptian pyramids. And you can go and search and look at that. And that links to the Flemings, who removed me from the Expound Manor Freehold Company. Reading on, it says he began his university education at University College, Oxford, where he received a first-class BA degrees in physics in October 1962. Okay, this is the year after Waterloo's was purchased by De La Rue, the main currency producer. It's also the year before the supposed assassination of JFK, and we're going to come to some connections to that actually in a minute. I suspect that is all a complete lie. I mean, I know we've known it's a lie, but my goodness me, it's going to be more of a deception than you realise, tying into all of this. Reading on, he says it became his graduate work at Trinity Hall, Cambridge, where in March 1966, again the same year as the foundation of the Church of Satan, he obtained his PhD in applied mathematics and theoretical physics, specialising in general relativity and cosmology. In 1963, at age 21, Hawking was diagnosed with early onset, slow progressing form of motor neurons disease. Hawking's scientific works included collaboration with Roger Penrose of gravitational singularity, theorems in the framework of general relativity, and the theoretical prediction that black holes emit radiation, often called Hawking radiation. Initially, Hawking radiation was controversial. By the late 1970s, and following the publication of further research, the discovery was widely accepted as a major breakthrough in theoretical physics. Hawking was the first to set out a theory of cosmology explained by a union of the general theory of relativity and quantum mechanics. Hawking was a vigorous supporter of the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. He also introduced the notion of micro black holes. A couple of important things in relation to this. First of all, the link to the radiation is likely very relevant to the cell towers. And I've now got a direct link from CERN to the cell towers, which I'm going to publicise later and look into a little bit more. And supposedly, those cell towers emit radiation, as do black holes. And it says he was the supporter of many worlds interpretation, in other words, potentially multi-dimensions and other worlds. Now, I suspect this is a deception. I suspect to hide what they're actually planning to do at CERN. Okay, and I've had, again, people have been trying to feed me information linking to Stargate and portals. Now, I suspect that is to make me believe that CERN is about time travel or portals, stargates, etc., multi-dimensions. And of course, that's in a lot of the movies, isn't it? Avengers, Spider-Man, I watched the other day, that had portals. And I suspect that is a deception to hide what they're really planning, which is the inversion of the universe to end time itself. And again, as I've said, we're going to come to that later. He also looked into the theory of micro black holes, and he was connected to the Royal Society. Of course, massive royal connections in relation to all of this, including the Royal Society and the research of the fraud and the deception. In 2002, Hawkins was ranked number 25 in the BBC's poll of the 100 greatest Britons. 2002 is obviously the year after the World Trade Center disaster, and the BBC are massively involved in this. Okay, they and other, in fact, all mainstream media and social media now has been confirmed as being linked to the fraud. And of course, it's important to them because this portrays the deception to the masses and stops them really realizing what's going on in relation to everything. So we're going to look at a bit of research in relation to Julian Assange again. So we're just going to go over to the Julian Assange document. As I've said previously, every area of research surrounding Julian Assange and those around him, including his mother, his father, the person that supplied him the intelligence that supposedly led to his arrest, links in very quickly to this international government fraud. But you can see here that his previous name was actually Julian Paul Hawkins. Remarkably similar, isn't it, to Stephen Hawking's? And you can see here Christine Ann Hawkins, his mother, and you can see his father, John Shipton. And we're going to look at a little bit of the research in relation to them in a moment. And the research shows the company that you used to work for, Suburbia Public Access Network in Australia. And here are some articles of Prince William attending MI6 offices in London around the 14th of June. A secret meeting supposedly, but it was publicised. Now, Prince William is massively connected and implicated in relation to this fraud, of course, and MI6 is very relevant because that links to the Flemings, who are connected to the intelligence agencies. And not long after that meeting, a few days later, Julian Assange was supposedly released from prison. I suspect he was never in prison at all. Certainly not for the time that we're led to believe. But they would have had photo shoots, obviously, around it to make us believe that. Further down in the document, I'm going to show this again because this is relevant. This is an article from The Guardian in 2016, okay, which again is relevant. That is the year that a supposed satanic ritual event took place outside of CERN. It's also the year that TikTok, okay, the platform that many people use, social media platform, was created. I suspect that is a symbology of a countdown to what their plan is in relation to CERN. And of course, we also have the doomsday clock, which is a countdown. So this article, growing up with the family inside Anne Hamilton Burns' sinister cult, is in relation to a doomsday cult in Australia. I'm not going to read all of this. On the left there, it says, as leader of the family, the Australian doomsday cult she founded in the 1960s, she claimed to be Jesus reborn as a woman. On the right, one of the few female cult leaders in history, and apparently one of the cruelest, Hamilton Burn operated in almost total secrecy over 2 decades, hidden away in the countryside outside Melbourne. The family's motto was unseen, unknown, unheard. The police, acting on information from 2 child escapees, raided the cult in 1987, 2 years before the creation of the World Wide Web. It emerged that over the years, Hamilton Burn had collected 28 children through bogus adoptions. Now, it's clear through my research that international child trafficking is a huge part of all of this, and also the blood taken from children. We're going to come to that a bit more later. On the left, it said the glamorous guru used the same tactic on her adult followers, handpicking them from Melbourne's wealthy professional elite with promises of spiritual fulfillment in the 1960s and 70s, when New Age seeking was all the rage. On the right, it says a few years ago, speculation emerged that WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange had grown up in the family. He later went on to admit that a man who was his mother's boyfriend in the late 1970s had been a member of the cult. The man had been a sinister presence who sought to have a certain psychological power over his family, Assange said, and they eventually went on the run from him. But he said he never met Hamilton Burn. On the left, she was preaching a mishmash of Christianity, Eastern mysticism. Okay, now I've found through my research that there's links to multiple faiths, but there certainly appears to be a very significant Egyptian, connection to all of this, and a potential infiltration by them of the Church of Satan to make it look like that this is a Jewish and satanic tying in with the scripture event that we're looking at in all of this. Reading on, it says she allegedly forced followers, including children, to take dangerous amounts of LSD and other hallucinogenics as part of prolonged initiation rites. Once they had submitted, she'd dictate every aspect of their lives. Now, I've heard this from several, I wouldn't say many people who were victims of sexual abuse when they were younger, that they were also drugged. And I do suspect that many people, many more than we believe, have been abused, and the drugs have been used to make them forget the abuse that they took part in, or that they were subjected to. Even research surrounding Chelsea Manning's mother is very important in relation to this. Chelsea Manning was the person that Julian Assange got the intel from, according to the research. She was a transgender. Okay, now that also is very relevant, because the Baphomet links to transgenderism. Okay, the merging of male and female, and the Baphomet is the symbol of the Church of Satan. But the research surrounding her mother, what's her name? I've forgotten her name now. Susan Manning, who supposedly died in an article from 2020. She supposedly died, which again is an important year, isn't it? Around the pandemic, around the same time actually that. I know it's a bit later that Gordon Bowden died, but the research links in to Wales, which is confirmed in the research surrounding Chelsea Manning, that in November 2001, 2 months after the World Trade Center disaster, Chelsea Manning moved to Wales with her mother. So Susan Manning links to Pembroke Companies, which is in Wales, and ironically, or whether you want to call it divinely, my nan was actually born in Pembroke. Okay, so I have connections to Wales. You have connections to Pembrokeshire Citizens Advice Bureaus. Okay, now those that follow my evidence will know that the Citizens Advice Bureaus are very important in relation to this, and they have all been infiltrated by the fraud. It is the first point of legal advice for most people. Of course, if they have that ability to silence those individuals and prevent it going through any legal advice into the legal system at the early stages, then of course that will prevent this being exposed and allow it to continue for longer, and allow them to funnel their criminally obtained money into their agenda, if you like. We then make links to Darwin, the theory of evolution companies. Okay, the Darwin Centre for Biology and Medicine. There's fraud throughout all of this, by the way. The Young Darwinian Limited company back into Wales. Then we find links to colleges, Waterloo, which ties in with the Freemasons, Law Society. Remember, the whole system is set up around this fraud. All right, they've got financial advisors centralised, accountants and solicitors. Unfortunately, if you know a solicitor, they're likely all part of this, or they have been. They may not have known about the child trafficking. They will definitely have known about the protected crime against humanity through the taxation system. Vil Vaspera, which links to the international child trafficking, a German legal firm, I believe. High school companies. The Worshipful Society of Apothecaries General Charity Limited. So there's links to pharmaceuticals. Then we hit Royal Medical Companies, Royal Society of Medical Press Limited, the British Council for Offices. And then we hit the same companies, okay, that link to the Madeleine McCann case, the Independent Schools Bursars and Independent Schools Inspectorate. They're exactly the same companies that link to the research of Madeleine McCann. We then have connections to religious establishments, the Diocesan Board of Finance in Bristol, a Fleming name, and then we link to various children's companies, Child Safe International. Remember, everything's an inversion. This is why Save the Children, the organisation, has been investigated for child trafficking. But that will be them trying to remove and destroy evidence in relation to all of this. Also, then we have links to more Child Whispering Limited company here. Media companies then linking in with the entertainment industry, of course, which the Flemings connect to via Ian Fleming, who created the James Bond books, which led to the movies. And again, this is just some of it. Swifting Corporations and Jordan's, exactly the same two companies that started Exbourne Manor. And then we have connections to the Avon and Somerset Constabulary Benevolent Fund. So the police again. And I've already shown in the previous part that the research surrounding Julian Assange's mother links very quickly to the Association of Chief Constables, which of course we've already mentioned earlier why that's relevant, and the date of 1947. The director from that company that we were looking at was appointed, you can see on the left there, 1999, and resigned just after the World Trade Center disaster. Into the Avon and Somerset Constabulary Benevolent Fund, Peter Land on the right links to the Police Children's Fund. And here's the Police Children's Fund, and on the incorporation document, you can't quite see it here on the left, but that is Hampshire Police, which is where Deborah Fleming was the CEO for Hampshire and Isle of Wight NHS, with a CO for NHS. And on the incorporation document, you have Waterloo's again, which links to the Freemasons. And then you make a connection via that company and Warren Franklin, who was a police officer, and you can see they were appointed in 2024, according to this, Police Superintendents Association Limited. And on the incorporation document for that Police Superintendents Association, you have JMW Solicitors. Those of you who've seen my research surrounding the helicopter crash in America on the 10th of April 2025, where the CEO for Siemens supposedly died, the Spanish CEO, somebody was, I believe, sent to do a video to make it appear that that was a accident, the helicopter crash. The person was called Dave Fishwick. When you research Dave Fishwick, he links almost immediately to this company, JMW Solicitors. So you can see how quickly this all ties in with Siemens. That helicopter crash would have been staged as the exposure of this fraud continues. Many things that you're seeing are happening because of the exposure of this fraud. That's 100% certain. Many fires that are happening will be to destroy evidence. There's been fires at BAE Systems, which massively links to this. Fires at a recycling plant in Hampshire, which happened within 48 hours of me releasing my evidence of the blood taken from children. On researching that location where the fire happened, I found that it was linking into David Icke and into exactly the same companies linked to the international child trafficking and the blood taken from children, and then linking into the Russian company. David Icke was there, and linking into the Russian company, Hackluit, that had already been linked to the Russian government, linking the Flemings, the royal family, etc. Loads of things have happened. A fire in London at the Rothschilds' office. This is all to destroy evidence as this continues to be exposed. Okay, let's go to another bit of the document. Research regarding James Kirkpatrick, who was Chelsea Manning's friend, and they had a company together, okay, in 2003, links very quickly into not only the fraud, again, but very quickly into Swifting Corporations and Jordan's, again, Monster Worldwide, okay, they love to put their symbology, okay, remember we're living under a beast system, Monster Worldwide, that has already featured in the research surrounding, I think it was the international child coming in from the mass murder of the children on Jersey. I'll have a little look, but it ties in to the research surrounding the King. We then make connections to an address which features throughout the fraud in New Milton, Hampshire here, Queensway House, 11 Queensway. And then we make connections to Admiralty Quarter, Portsmouth, and Portsmouth Naval Base. Those that have seen the research regarding the company, the Satanic Temple, United Kingdom, will know that that exact company comes up, okay, and that links the Royal Navy into the international fraud. And in fact, on the incorporation document, it has then links to John Fleming via the church network that he is part of. John Fleming is Deborah Fleming's husband, who and she initiated my removal from Exbourne Manor. So you can see how this all ties in. And on the incorporation document, it's also got the Archbishop links to the Archbishop of Canterbury. And that's coming in, remember, from this person who was Chelsea Manning's friend. who had a company with him, according to the research. Then make links to Southern Housing Group, which again has featured previously, links into the fraud, Swifting Corporations and Jordans and Sons, the same criminal companies, Mason's Secretarial. Let's go to another bit of the document. In fact, come back for the next part, please, because we've done half an hour. Thank you.